Laminate furniture was all the rage in the 60s and 70s, and it's all over IKEA nowadays. But if you don't like that shiny laminate look and you're wondering if you can paint it, I'm here to tell you yes, if you follow these steps. Using a laminate bedroom set from my parents' house on the coast, we're gonna take this from drab and dreary to bright and beachy. Let's go. Here's the laminate furniture in question. This is in one of the bedrooms at my family's house on the coast, and this room doesn't get a ton of natural light, so having this dark furniture just kind of makes it feel a bit more cavernous than it needs to be. We're going to give that a refresh and a makeover with paint, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. You can see that this is laminate, it's not real wood, and if you flip over to the back you can see it's just like MDF or particle board. So time to put everything in the garage and get started with this makeover. Here's all the supplies and tools I'll be using, and I'll make sure to link everything below so you can check it out. The first thing you need to do before painting is to give everything a really good clean. So I'm just taking Simple Green, which is a great degreaser, and spraying it and then wiping it all down, kind of scrubbing it, making sure that there's no dirt. Then going through and doing a nice rinse with some clean, warm water. This is really important because paint cannot adhere to the surface if it's covered in dirt. So you want to make sure it's adhering to the surface rather than adhering to the dirt. I'm adding a bit of wood fill now from Dixie Belle Paint Company. This is called Dixie Mud, and basically you can use any type of wood fill, but this is a good beginner friendly option. You put it on with a putty knife and then you scrape off the excess and then let it set overnight. While that is drying, I am going to sand the rest of the pieces though, where there isn't any wood fill. Scuff sanding is just doing a light sanding over the whole piece, not really worrying about getting off any imperfections. The goal of scuff sanding is to roughen up the piece a little bit so it's easier for the paint to stick. For this project, I'm choosing to use Annie Sloan paint. Annie Sloan paint is great because it has very few VOCs or volatile organic compounds, meaning again, you can use it indoors and without a respirator. It is water-based paint and it can stick to pretty much anything. So if you don't want to sand, make sure that you get a paint like Annie Sloan chalk paint, the original chalk paint, where you do not have to do a real sand to the piece. With Annie Sloan paint, you can also just kind of paint in every direction. I'm going for a textured, beachy driftwood look for this piece rather than a smooth modern finish. So that's why I'm painting in every which way rather than painting all in one direction. If you want to go for more of a modern finish, that's a really smooth finish, you're going to want to paint all in the same direction and maybe use a synthetic brush from Zebra rather than one of these natural bristle brushes from Annie Sloan. Again, you really can just directly apply the paint and you're good to go. Annie Sloan chalk paint is just amazing and it has really, really good adhesion. It sticks very well to any surface, even plastic or metal. So if you're painting shiny laminate, this will work without fail. Good morning. It's the next morning. I have coffee in my whale cup and it's time for the next coat. Annie Sloan chalk paint is really thick, but remember it's also water-based, which means that you can add water either to your mixing cup or you can dip your paintbrush in a little bit of water before dipping it into your paint, and that will help it spread farther, and a little bit really goes a long way. So at this point, I have finished 2 layers of the Cocoa Annie Sloan paint, and it's looking pretty good. I just wanted a pretty consistent layer of paint on top of this piece. And now I'm going to go through and do a light coat of whitewash. And I just mixed up a bit of paint with maybe 4 to 1 water to paint. So I'm going to do a smooth coat of that on the top of this piece, and the goal is not to overwork it too much. I just want to get a light coat that kind of makes it a little bit more textured and gives it a bit more of that kind of like wood grain whitewashed look. At this point, I was feeling pretty good about how it was turning out. It looks patchy, but that's how I want it to look. I want it to look kind of like whitewashed driftwood. We went to the beach on a walk, and I was kind of inspired by this whole picture. Obviously, that's a cute little photo. So I'm also going through and doing just a tiny bit of distressing. So if you've never done distressing before, it's really not that hard. You can just take a very fine grit sandpaper, like 320 or something like that, and you just sort of go through and hit any of the spots that are kind of poking out. So like corners and edges and things like that, where if it was out in the world, it would like naturally get bumped in those places. You're just gonna hit those spots with the sanding just a tiny bit to kind of just roughen up the edges and make it look a little bit warm. Now I'm going to do a layer of dry brushing. For dry brushing, you want to take a dry brush and put a little paint on and then unload it onto another surface. So you saw that I'm dipping it in, and then I am taking all that excess and wiping it off on a paper bag before putting any of that on my surface. So then I'm ready, once my brush is really dry, to kind of go through like I'm dusting or something and kind of just use a really light feathery touch to just get a bit of that dry textured white on the piece. This is called dry brushing. Katja here on YouTube has some great tutorials on dry brushing, and feel free to leave me questions or comments below if you have any. So now I'm going through and adding some black dry brushing. I'm doing the exact same thing that I did by offloading a dry paintbrush, and I'm just going through and kind of hitting spots on the corners and edges and things like that, just to give it a bit more of an aged and weathered look. Now that the dry brushing is done, I'm going to clean up the hardware or whatever that is, just cleaning it off first with a sponge. And now I'm applying gold gilding wax from Dixie Belle, first with just my finger, and then getting into the corners and edges and details of that with a detail artist brush. The hardware looks nice and bright and gold and beautiful, but it doesn't match the weathered look, so I'm doing a bit of dry brushing black on top of that as well. For some reason, between 2 nightstands and 1 bookshelf, there is only 1 handle, but I'm just doing the same thing to that, putting on some gilding wax and then doing some black dry brushing. Now that all my paint is dry and I have all of the artistic layers on as well, it's time to protect this piece. So there's many different ways that you can protect a piece of painted furniture or painted laminate furniture, and I'm using Annie Sloan's chalk paint wax in the color clear. So I'm just going to take a t-shirt rag and get a little bit on my rag and then just lightly wipe it over the whole piece. You're going to want to get a nice coat on there, let it sit, and then do another coat and buff up the excess when you're done. The wax and the paint does take a while to cure and to harden, so I wouldn't recommend putting anything that might scratch it on top of it for 20 to 30 days. I mean, if you have like felt pads on the bottom of a lamp or something, that's totally fine. And then it is water resistant. I've spilled water on several of my pieces that have chalk paint covered up with wax, and if you just wipe it back immediately, there's no problems and it doesn't seep down into it. Time for the finishing touches, and I'm adding the hardware back on using my Ryobi drill. If you're enjoying this video, could you please take a second just to click the like button down below? It's just a thumbs up, or if you really don't like it, you can click thumbs down. It'll just tell YouTube that you like what you see, and it'll help spread awareness about how to save furniture from going to the trash. Only you can save furniture from the trash. Thanks. Here's a reminder of what this bedroom set looked like before. This dark laminate, outdated, old furniture has gotten a complete makeover with chalk paint, and here is the final result. I love the lighter look of these pieces and how they fit into the room and the whole kind of beachy driftwood aesthetic. Also, while the paint was drying, I painted that mirror because it was also really dark and I wanted it to match the whole room. I love this laminate furniture makeover, and so do my parents. We really like how it has just lightened up the whole room, but still has a cool vibe to it. Hopefully you learned something today and enjoyed painting along with me. If you have questions about how to paint laminate furniture, how to choose out chalk paint or gilding wax, or how to do dry brushing or whitewashing or anything like that, let me know down in the comments. I'm always happy to answer every single comment that I receive on my channel. This is not my first laminate furniture makeover. I have also done an IKEA Kallax unit, which is totally laminate, and I've also painted a bookshelf for my home office. I'm gonna link those videos right here, and I will see you at the next flip.